Waheguru Khalsa, Waheguru Fateh. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Media Watch. I'm your host, Dr. Sally. Now, every week we look at the news from around the world, and sometimes we look at Sikh news as well. This week, like normal, we try our best to book some good guests, and we've got a fantastic guest with us. I won't steal his thunder, I'll be passing on to him in a second. His name is Gurdev Singh. He is an ex-professional wrestler. I think he still does some veteran stuff. Better not argue with him. And also he's done a lot of work in terms of social work. He's also an author as well. One of the things that we'll be looking at later on is his wonderful book here called Eastern Roots. It's got some fantastic poetry as well. I know you're working on quite a few books, but without further ado, let's hand over to Gurdev Singh. Waheguru Khalsa, Waheguru Fateh. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Tell us a little bit about your sporting career first.
Okay. Well, before I arrived in England, I came to England in 1959. I went to secondary school in India, in Punjab, near my village. Used to play kabaddi in the shorty team, and also enjoyed playing hockey at the same time, and football. When I arrived here, I didn't even go to school for the first 9 months. I came with another family, my mother and my brothers and sisters still in India. So it wasn't a priority for me to go to school. I stayed at home, I couldn't watch TV because there were no TV those days. I just played with Agore friends. Couldn't even speak English.
So you got into sport, didn't you?
Yeah. Then after 9 months, I went to school, local school, started playing football, and I was in a team for a little while. Then I left school at 15. Those days you had to leave school at 15, and there was a big gap between 15 to about 19. I didn't do any sports at all. I did a bit of running, and that's about it. And then some of my friends got into wrestling in Bradford, and one of them, Amrik Singh, he got picked for the England team. He encouraged me. I went to the same youth club and got involved and took up wrestling. My younger brother took up wrestling at the same time. He was better than me technically, but I was stronger.
Right. Well, you're still pretty strong. You got those muscles.
Yeah. You know, he stopped wrestling when he went to uni, but I carried on. I moved down to Letchworth Garden City. That's where I live now, and I set up a wrestling club there, and some Punjabi guys joined in, and we had 3 or 4 really good wrestlers, and I kept that. My priority was wrestling, but I dabbled with other sports as well. I took up judo. Judo is similar to wrestling. I was black belt in judo. I took up karate, done a bit of boxing, then started running small marathons like 5 miles, 7 miles. So I was kind of all-rounder. That kept busy. That kept me busy, training mostly 6-7 days a week. And when Punjabi tournaments came about, we used to go every weekend for wrestling fights. And then I played kabaddi. We developed a kabaddi team in Letchworth. Played kabaddi as well. In 1982, a kabaddi team and a wrestling team went over to Canada. I represented England.
Wow.
In '82 and came back with 2 trophies.
Well done.
That was good achievement. The type of wrestling that I did was freestyle Olympic wrestling. There's another discipline, it's called Greco-Roman. Mm-hmm. So I took part in that. Greco-Roman, where, you know, in wrestling you don't use your legs. You know, you can't use your leg to pin your opponent down. It's just upper body.
But do you do veteran stuff now?
Yeah, I mean, I stopped for a while, then I carried on. I went to India. I've been going to India backward and forward for the last 7-8 years. Right. And I often go to akhadas there, and they all look up to me and say, "Uncle, teach us this, teach us that."
You know the techniques, right?
Yeah, and their style is a little bit different. We do wrestling on the mats here, but in India they do it on the ground. They dig the ground up. It's on the earth. It's different kind of discipline.
But part of that, so from your sporting career, you did actually do something else as well. You spent a lot of time in social services, doing a lot of projects, didn't you?
Yeah, when I moved down to Letchworth, I I was attending youth club anyway. One of the youth workers asked me if I wanted to be a volunteer, so I became a volunteer. Then they sent me on a training course. I trained in part-time youth work, and then they took me on, gave me some hours to work in the evenings. We developed an Asian club. We call it Asian, but it was Indians basically. We set up a weightlifting club in Letchworth. One of the lifters that became a British champion, and I think he's a veteran world champion now in weightlifting.
Okay.
And
tell us about your social work that you've done. You did a lot of special projects, didn't you?
Yeah, later on I went to uni, got my qualifications in youth and community work, and started working full time. I set up a Asian Boys Club in Letchworth, and then start working with mainstream kids. Later on, I moved to Stevenage doing detached work, and then I left that job to develop my career. Came down to Haringey, where I developed, and I became a training officer, and then came a second to the head of service. That gave me scope to do lots of additional work, the creative side of things. In the 80s, HIV and AIDS was an issue, and there were no provisions for people from the Indian subcontinent. And I, with another chap, we set up this project called NAS Project based in London. And one of the things we did was consulted young people about the HIV and AIDS or their sexual practices. And there was a need to send out a message.
I think more than ever, really. I mean, I just wanted to start off with one of the stories that we've got. Sadly, we have news about 19 people, including 17 foreign tourists, that have been killed by gunmen. We don't know where they're from. There's a possible accusation that they may be some militant organisation. The Italian Prime Minister says that Italian, Spanish, Polish and German citizens were amongst those killed. Our hearts go out to the families. Mm-hmm. But again, we saw the Paris thing happen. That again, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's death that's mm-hmm. happening. I wanted to just ask your view, purely because you've done so much work with young people as well. That it seems that this term that they're using about radicalisation mm-hmm. of some of these people. Like I said, we don't know the full story behind this Tunis situation. But do you think that sports or getting involved in communities working together, at a sports or a youth club, is that some way of better channeling their energy? I mean, the other story is the one about the three kids who were trying to use the same route mm-hmm. as the three girls the other week, mm-hmm. trying to get into Syria through Turkey. They got stopped, mm-hmm. brought back into the UK, right. and then they're out on bail. Mm-hmm. And there's also talk about people coming back. Mm-hmm. So is this implying that the cut down in youth services has led to possibly other people trying to, radicalise them?
Well, I don't know a lot about the issue of radicalisation. I think within our own community, within our Sikh community or Indian community, I haven't heard anything like that at all. Yes, young people want to broaden their experiences in certain ways. They want to experiment in certain issues. That usually happen, when they're 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Yeah. And I think listening to the news, a lot of the radicalisation is referred to Muslim young people, especially young men from within those communities.
We've seen that behaviour.
Yeah. When I was
that's once been reported.
Yeah. When I was working in Haringey, I had a Muslim group that I was responsible for. It was mostly boys who used to turn up twice a week, and we did a lot of work in terms of racism, because racism affected them at the time, and it still does. And other issues were unemployment in London, those kind of issues. But when the summer break came, we took them away on residentials and tackled other issues, about leaving home, parental pressure, arranged marriages and so on and so forth. And I'm not doing that anymore. So I'm not.
Do you think the emphasis more on boys or than helping girls? Do you think that there's an opportunity to maybe help girls as well? You know, I mean, I was listening to the news the other day, and there was some kind of phone-in, and there was this thing about how these particular girls happen to be in, I'm not saying it's an excuse or anything, but they happen to be in a orphanage, and one of the people phoned up and said, actually, the only thing we can offer them to stop them from leaving and going out at night and being preyed upon by, sadly, other idiots, was just snakes and ladders. There doesn't seem to be a kind of a curriculum or a kind of way of channeling energy in a positive way. It doesn't matter whether you're a boy or a girl. You know, just to kind of, you know, sport and other projects don't seem to, you know, inspire people. I saw Comic Relief. I don't know if you watched that last week, and you look at the dire situation that certain people are in certain countries. You know, in some parts, people have got so much. In some places, they have nothing. You know.
Well, far as we're concerned in this country, the funding's been cut back over the last 4 or 5 years. Youth services have been closed down. People I'm in touch with, you know, the colleagues who worked in the youth service before, I still keep in touch with them, and they just say the nature of the youth work has changed. The MCs have changed. In the past, the youth services did a lot of work, leisure and educational, but now it's educational more than leisure. A lot of the young people who came to the youth club came voluntary, and some only came to play snooker. So when they came, you had the opportunity to engage with those young people.
Do you think it's the internet that's causing this, in terms of people are spending more time at home, they're online, they get a bit more lazy, they've got crazy things like iWatches and whatever it is, Apple Watches, they've got more kind of techno gadgets to get distracted with? They're not necessarily being as encouraged to be as fit as they could be?
Well, it all depends. I think it stems from the family. You know, if members of your family are that way inclined, they go running and they make sure what they eat is good for their bodies and mind. And that would, you know, obviously have influence on the young person. If your mum and dad's smoking in the house, drinking, your old man's drinking always down the pub, and you hardly see him. When he comes home, he's arguing with your mother and so on and so forth. And that does affect on the developmental side of the young person, you know, and sometimes that can trigger a rebellious in a young person. So as far as our community is concerned, MCs are on boys, and the girls hardly get a look into certain things. If a boy wants to go to a party, mum and dad don't object, you know. Most of them don't object, some probably do. But then if the daughter want to do the same thing, and they said, no, it's not, you're not being responsible, sanu shame kardiyan tu bahar jani adhi raat tain. And the boys and girls, both of them want the same thing. You know, if it's all right for the boys, the girls want the same thing. And if you don't allow that opportunity for them to go in a safe environment, if you don't know your son or the daughter, you know, whether you can trust them or not, then something's wrong somewhere. And I think I always pushed equality when I was working as a youth and community worker. You know, if it's good for the boys, it's good for the girls as well.
Yeah, I mean, so let's talk, because I'm really interested in kind of your sports views as well. There has been criticism in the past about, let's talk about football in particular, that with the 2018 World Cup coming, there's been a suggestion, there's a story that apparently it's going to be difficult to govern the racism issue in Russia, for example. You know, it's all very well. I think it's earlier in the week. This is literally news that came out last week, which was FIFA President Sepp Blatter said he was concerned by the findings of the study into the scale of Russian racism. You know, so it's difficult for spectators. It's difficult because even if you look in the UK, I mean, I don't know, when I was growing up, I always heard stories about that. Sometimes the scouts are a little bit, you know, the people that go out to find sports people aren't necessarily looking at they're looking at the white people. They're not necessarily looking at the people who are non-white. You know, although you could argue there are a lot of black people now in sport, but there aren't that many brown people. You know, it's not because they're not technically able to do it. It's maybe they haven't given an opportunity. I don't know. What's your view on that?
Well, when I was growing up in this country, when I was going to school, I was playing football, and I played in the school team. That's about it. But if I wanted to go further, I think the barrier was my parents. They wanted me to work, earn the money so we could send the money back home. That was the case with a lot of my friends, my Sikh friends, my Indian friends. They would say, "Oh, you're wasting time. ਅਸੀਂ ਤਾਂ ਪੈਸੇ ਕਮਾਉਣਾ ਹੈ ਇੱਥੇ ਫੁੱਟਬਾਲ ਤਾਂ ਖੇਡਣਾ ਹੈਗਾ." ਤਾਂ then you had to take that on the chin. And I now look back and sometimes I'm angry with my dad and say, "Why didn't you let me, you know?"
But sometimes it might be that you were good, but you may not have been given the opportunity because, you know, sometimes they don't necessarily. I mean, it's only in recent years, I don't know how many, but you see people from different backgrounds coming into the cricket team, for example, you know.
Well, I agree, racism played a big part.
Yeah, so racism is not necessarily just in the way that they shout at players and make rude kind of slagging them off or whatever it is. Actually, when they're playing football, which is totally uncalled for, you know, calling them names and swearing at them. And on another level, you've got it, you know, we're not letting all the players come through who've got the talent. Well,
we've got talent within our communities, both Pakistani, Bangladeshi, Sri Lankan and Indian communities. And these talented players are not sought after, if you like, by the scouts. Years ago, I remember two managers talking, and they were asked the same question about why more Asian players are not playing in the leagues and the big teams, and one of them said, "Well, they're not strong enough. They're weak. They don't eat the right diet."
Is that an excuse? Is it?
Well, at the time, it was justified that way, but it made me angry. It made lots of people who were into football angry. It was part of their racism that was coming out.
Right.
That's not true. We're just as strong as anybody else. I mean, I know that in my sport, in wrestling and judo, you know, I'm just as strong as anybody else. It doesn't matter about my age, and that's just an excuse. I would dearly love to see more Indian, Pakistani, you know, Bengali and Sri Lankan football players come in and playing. When I watch a Premiership team play, there's hardly an Asian person, a footballer, playing amongst them. There's been just a handful.
It's a handful, yeah. I was going to ask you, we were talking about this the other day on the phone when we were chatting, and I really wanted to ask your view on this. I wrote an article about this, which was about sports commentating.
Okay.
Whenever you watch Olympic Games or whenever you watch the Commonwealth Games,
right,
it seems to be an obsession by the BBC just to talk about the Great Britain team. They don't seem to talk about, hey, there's this really great runner who comes from India and she's worked really hard and she's done really well, and look at her performance, or look at this guy who maybe he didn't come in the top three, but he did, right, come in the top three, but he's from an African country and he's done really well in swimming. They don't seem to focus in on that. Do you agree with me? Do you think that the media is biased towards more Great Britain doing really well? I know it's a bit of rah-rah, say, yeah, team, you should do well, but they don't seem to focus on other countries. I thought the whole point of you know, sports was to bring people together and, you know, look at their lives as well.
Well, there's truth in that, yeah, but they don't. It's just that that's how they're conditioned. You know, they don't see it outside of the box. You know, you take the Commonwealth Games and the Olympic Games or the European Games. There's different nationalities taking part. They're all participating, and even the camera person is focusing on the British.
It's probably
athlete.
been told by somebody else. Yeah,
yeah. Obviously, within the athletics now, there's more and more black athletes coming forward. Mixed race athletes are coming forward, and they considered as British or English. And I don't see many athletes, or runners, or other athletes within that sport coming forward from our communities. And I don't know what it is. Given the opportunity, we're just as fast as runners as anybody
absolutely.
else.
Yeah.
You know, if the trainings are provided and the diet is recommended and the coaches encourage us and take us on to training courses, you know, yes, we're allowed to participate in possibly cricket and one or two other sports, and that's very limiting.
Thing. Now, I wanted to ask you, because we've got about 5 minutes left. Time rushes by when you. I could talk to you all night, actually.
Right.
Now, this fantastic book you've got, right? Tell us a little bit about it. And like I said, we got about literally 4 minutes or so.
Okay.
There was a. Just tell us about the book, and you were going to read something from here as well, weren't you?
Yeah. It's this came about. My friend, he's another youth and community worker from Liverpool, but he works in London, Ashok Burman. Me and him been together for a long time. We have a lot in common. And we spoke about doing a project like this. And he came up with a scenario about Liverpool, because a lot of the migrants from India and Indian subcontinent came to Liverpool through ships. And then I thought I could do one in North Hearts. In North Hearts, we had Punjabi people arriving in, the first Punjabi person to arrive in Letchworth, I think it was 1929.
Yeah, I've been to Letchworth, and there's quite a big Sikh community there, isn't there?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
One of the reasons the Sikh community is present in Letchworth, because there's a lot of work.
Right.
Okay. You know, there's a lot of factories, but they're all closed down now.
Right.
In the 60s and the 70s, a lot of work. And, you know, when our people move into one area and there's enough work, and they tell other people move in.
Sure.
And that was the situation.
Tell us about the poem that you're going to...
Okay, there's loads of poems.
Read it out to us. Which was one? You picked one in particular that you were going to talk about.
Yeah.
This is a fascinating book, by the way. It really is amazing.
Thank you so much. This one called Show Me. I'm going to read it out. It's about immigrations. A lot of Gore says, I'm English. They don't even say British, I'm English. And this is challenging their Englishness. First the Romans came. Then came the Gauls, the Greeks, the Lombards, Saxons and the Danes. The Normans, Irish and the Scot, they also came. All of them sowed their seed and created a brand new breed. Stop all this farce, you breed of mixed up ass. Show me a true-born Englishman, and I'll show you an Indian elephant with greater ancestry. Is it your Romans? Is it your Normans? Is it your Saxons? Is it your Danes? Or is it your Indian Afro-Caribbean? Show me a true-born Englishman, and I'll show you an Indian elephant with greater ancestry.
It's very good. Very good indeed, actually. Thank you for that.
Right.
And I think what it does show is, you know, hey, I mean, first of all, it's the Irish, and then they talk about the Jewish, and they talk about all these different immigrants that come over, and then eventually they become, and with all this talk about immigration, which is probably going to be some kind of election issue at some state, I'm surprised that people, you know, are the first point of, you know, blame for any economic issues is immigrants, whereas they're the ones who bring the country up, and they make money for the country, don't they? Well,
if you look at our community, Indian people have been here for 300-400 years.
Yeah, exactly.
And Afro-Caribbean, the black people, have been here even longer. You know, they were brought over.
Well, I'm afraid that's all we got time for, actually. Time flies by. But it was wonderful to meet you.
Thank you so much.
I really appreciate you coming on the show and spending your time with us. Tell us about the great stuff you've done in terms of sports, and you're continuing to do with the veteran teams. We wish you health and happiness going forward, as well as the fact that, you know, good to get your input into kind of youth projects and what people can do, kind of channeling their energy and not giving up on their dreams and really pursuing it. This is a great, you know, set of work that you've done. I know you've got other books coming out as well, so look out for this. This is known as Eastern Roots. Really good, loads of great photos.
I've got loads of copies left over.
Right.
This came out about 7 years ago. If people want copies, they can phone you.
Okay, that's great. I'm sure they can send an email to, so if you want to get hold of us, you can get hold of us, and you can send us an email if you want, info@seekchannel.tv, where we can sure get hold of the book and maybe send it to you if you send us an email. So that's it for this week. Thanks a lot for tuning in, and my thanks again to my guest Gurdev Singh. So wonderful to have him. We'll see you next time. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.